What's up, YouTube? Welcome back to another deep dive analysis. I'm your host, HBC Luke, and today we're going to be going over the Major Champs Gentlemates Alpine. And honestly, I didn't think I'd be having to make a deep dive analysis for this team. They were a team that going into the Major were complete underdogs. They were a team that some people say that after Regional 1, probably they got a lot of help, to be honest, going into that Major. And yet they come in and honestly, this is probably my title, but they upset every team they played against, in my opinion, on paper. So for those of you who are new to my deep dive analysis, what we do is we take one event from a team, and from that event we look at the individual strengths and weaknesses of all the players, and then we look at the team strengths and weaknesses of the team itself, and then we take some notes, and we overall just have a bunch of notes that we can look at for the future reference. I originally created this for commentators and other coaches to use when they're analyzing pro gameplay, just some stuff to look for, but over time, I mean, I know there's a lot of people out there that like analysis content, so that's what we ended up starting here with. And today, as I said, we're going to be going over Gentlemates. So without further ado, let's look at the event that we're going to be looking at. We're going to be looking at the Major 1. Of course, we have 16 fantastic teams that ended up going here, from Karma Core all the way down to Limitless, but the team that we're going to be looking for is Gentlemates. And going into this Major, people forget what people thought about Gentlemates going into this Major. Sure, in Qualifier 1, they take out Vitality, but normally you see the World Champ team fall off a little bit after they win the World Championship. And honestly, it wasn't even a full fall off. They still went to 7, and Alpine and Gentlemates managed to get the win off the kickoff pretty much in that Game 7. And they ended up taking Karma Core to Game 6. But after this regional, they fell off a little bit. If we look at Open Qualifier 2, we can see that they only made top 8. And even their run to top 8 was fraught with worry. As we can see, they lost to Karma Core, which is, that's fine, they lost to Karma Core. But they also lost to Oxygen and took Top Cougars to Game 5. So that's also a series, that's probably a Swiss that probably people wouldn't expect from the grand finalists in the previous regional. And then they also got knocked out by BDS in the first quarterfinal as well. And then looking at Regional 3, I believe they also had pretty much a similar story. This one they do go 3-1, but they do get swept by Moist. And of course, this is a Moist roster that the previous event didn't even make the main event. So definitely that's something Gentlemates are looking to have on their record in that one. And then they lose to BDS again in the quarterfinals. Not something you'd expect. Normally expect the top 4 in EU to all be able to interchange series. But Gentlemates, the only team they beat in the top 4 was Vitality. And luckily for them, the team that beat them in Swiss was Moist, who did make a top 4. But even then, it's still a question as to how Gentlemates are going to go into that event. And most people, they didn't rank Gentlemates pretty highly at all. In fact, looking at this, Rule 1, I'd say Rule 1 on paper have the better players. And normally, and Nappa, of course, is a very solid player. And yet, Gentlemates managed to beat them. BDS swept them both times. Falcons, I think, were the heavy favorites going into this match, and yet Falcons get swept by Gentlemates. So all 3 of these matches were pretty much upset wins for Gentlemates, in my opinion. And then you get Gen G versus Gentlemates, which on paper, I'd say Gen G are probably the better team. And yet, Gentlemates win that. Same with Karma Core, better on paper. In fact, I believe this is the first time that Gentlemates beat Karma Core. And that went to 7. And then G2. Also, I mean, if Gen G are the better team on paper, I'd say G2 are as well. And Gentlemates ended up forcing G2 to have to reverse sweep them. And G2, of course, weren't able to get it done. So, definitely a great run. Probably the only team in RLCS history to win an event in which every series of theirs was an upset win. And I think that's, honestly, it's crazy to me. So, what we're probably going to do is we're probably going to look at a Gentlemates versus BDS match from the Swiss, and then we're going to instantly hop into the quarterfinals against Gen G pretty much right after that. So let's pull up the replays, and let's get started. So round 2 uppers. Oh, we don't have to look at that. Gentlemates, Alpine. Alpine. I don't know how it's pronounced. I heard the commentator say Alpine, but I'm not sure. I'm used to saying Alpine. But I think a good match to look at here would probably be that game 1. Or game 3, actually, probably be better. Let's look at that. So, I think for this one, we're going to start off with Seiko. You know, let's start off with Seiko, world champ. So, before we even start off, we have to go over what are we going to be looking for. And of course, if you've seen one of these before, you already know what we're going to be looking for. But there's two sides of the Rocket League that we're going to be looking at. We're looking at the individual basics that we're going to be looking at from the players. And we're going to be looking at the necessary team basics. There's necessary things that we expect of all the individuals in a high-level team, and necessary things that we expect from the team side of things. So, from the individual side of things, what are the necessary individual basics? The one thing that we're going to be looking for is possession. At the end of the day, in order to score in Rocket League, you physically need the ball. It doesn't make sense to give away the ball just to try and get it back. And so, cut out the middleman. Keep it the entire time. So, possession is going to be the main thing we're looking for. And of course, possession, when working on possession, you need to be able to take better mechanics. You need better mechanics to take better and better possession. And lastly, the next thing we're going to be looking for is the idea of how well the players read the play ahead of time rather than react. That's going to be one major thing that we're going to be looking for outside of possession. We're going to be looking for possession and how well they read the play over react. Do they know what's happening after the ball's hit, or do they know what's happening before? And that's the difference between the best players and the worst pro players. And then from a team standpoint, the biggest thing that we're going to be looking for is how well the team fills in the 3 necessary jobs to maximize pressure. In order to win in Rocket League, what do you need? Of course, you need more goals than the other team. But how do you score more goals? You need to maximize pressure. And the best way to do that is you need to make sure that you have all 3 players in the team fill in these roles in priority. And these roles are when you always need someone on the ball, trying to get possession or maintain possession. So this is our ball guy. Then, of course, we need somebody that supports the ball guy at all times, whether offense or defense. His job is to support first. And lastly, we need somebody to make sure they're applying off-ball pressure. Now, some people don't understand why off-ball pressure is necessary, but over time, we'll probably go over more into why off-ball pressure is necessary. But the long story short, off-ball pressure is necessary because we don't want to give our teammate, your opponent's time and space. What is maximizing pressure? It's the ability to take and maintain space on the opponent's end of the field, or relieve space on our own end of the field to take it back. So, of course, we have the person on the ball and supporting to push the ball into their space, but we need that off-ball pressure guy to make sure the team doesn't have time to set up and overall take that space back from the opponents. But without further ado, let's turn off the music and let's get started. Alright, let me just make sure I got everything set up and ready to go. I think I do. But everybody, let's get started with Gentlemates. We're going to be looking at Seiko first. Seiko, of course, is a world champion and now a major winner as well. Itachi, a 2-time major winner. Alright, right off the bat, we can see instantly from Seiko he's going to go support Juicy. We can see that it's off the kickoff, though, so he goes for the boost, and then Juicy's immediately up. And we can see that Seiko, he's really far away from this play, but it's more so that timing thing. Seiko felt right off the kickoff, it's better to get a bit more boost. And we can see that Itachi has the same idea. So now that the kickoff's over, let's see how Gentlemates handle this. So we can see a force here from Seiko, and he ends up forcing it low. Now this is normally when we're looking at high-level Rocket League, we want to be seeing players force it high. And there's basic reasoning for this. Imagine we got a player on the ground, and we got our opponent in the air dribbling, right? So our opponent's in the air, we're on the ground. If we force it low, like remember, who are we forcing for? Of course we're trying to get the ball ourselves, but if we can't if we can't take the ball ourselves, we want to make sure that we're at least forcing it to our teammate in the best way possible. We're trying to make it as easy as possible for our teammate to get that ball, assuming we don't get it. And that's why in Rocket League we tend to want to force it high. But here's the reasoning as to why we force high instead of low. If we force it low, think about it from the second man's POV. The opponent is going up, we force them low, they're going down, which means they can get a reset or just continue the air dribble going down. They can fake it again to go lower, they can shoot it high to go up, and they can also just take a straight up 50. There's so many different options that the person with the ball can do whenever the first man on your team ends up forcing it low. But let's take it the other way around. Imagine our teammate here forces it high instead. So our opponent, of course, they're in the air, they're taking it high. When they're forcing it high, they're only going in one direction the entire time. And when they're going in one direction the entire time, that's so much easier for your second man to be able to read wherever he is behind you. And normally, a lot of second men can just pretty much camp the backboard. Their teammate forces a high to them, and they get a free possession on the backboard a majority of the time. And even if the second man doesn't go backboard, it still is normally easier. Now imagine if Seiko challenged more so in the midfield. Itachi would be able to grab pads and rotate behind. Here, imagine the ball's still here in the midfield and Seiko ends up forcing high right here. Itachi would have been grabbing pads this entire time and rotating behind him. And then even at the midfield line, Seiko forces it high. And then Itachi would have a way easier follow-up even on the ground to keep the pressure on the offensive end. So normally it's normally in general, it's better to force a high just because it's a lot easier for your teammate to read. There are some situations where you could probably convince yourself forcing it low would be better, and if you, at the end of the day, if you execute, you execute. But in general, we want to be seeing him force it high here. Now this is just a one-time thing, so we're not going to mark it down in the notes as a weakness of his, but it is something that we do have to consider. So here we go. Seiko takes possession. We can see that Seiko's really good at trying to maintain possession. But let's see overall what the team ends up doing here. So here we go. Possession. Pass it over to Juicy. Now let's see the support. We can see Itachi ends up filling in support. Now it's going to be to Seiko. He ends up fake challenging. Now it's a good loss 50 there from Itachi, and Seiko's trying to support it close. Now let's go over to Juicy for a sec. So here, Juicy's rotating around the outside. He grabs that big boost. And then he ends up trying to play an outlet pass for his teammate. He ends up getting beat, but he can still see that he ends up forcing it high here. Alright? So overall, we can see that Gentlemates are putting kind of an emphasis on quick follow-ups, which I really, really like. And that's a really good habit to have as a second man. What are we looking for in a second man? Of course, as we said before, the job of the second man is to support first. Right? And technically third man, his job is mainly off-ball pressure, but I also like to think of him as he's trying to be as useful as possible off the ball, which can also mean outlet passes as well. Outlet passes as well. There's so many things the third man can do here. So in this situation, we can see that Tachi's technically the second man for Seiko here, but Juicy in the situation, he's trying to be an outlet pass for Seiko. And we can see no matter if it's the person who's third man that's receiving a pass, or whoever second man is receiving a pass, we can see that no matter which player is the one supporting, that they're always trying to emphasize quick follow-ups with their passes. They don't want to give the opponents time and space. In their mind, once the ball is hit, somebody has to be instantly up for it. Don't give the opponents time and space. So that is something that we can put as a strength here for the team side of Gentlemates. Gentlemates always emphasize a very fast follow-up to any teammate's touch. This ensures that the opponents never have time on the ball, as well as ensuring that the team always has a support role. Whether, to add on, this rule also follows even when they use the third man as an outlet pass. This makes Gentlemates a very pass-heavy, pass and pressure-oriented team around the ball, which makes them more dynamic than a team that only solo plays or only passes to their second man. So overall, this is really good stuff here from Gentlemates. Right off the bat, we already have a lot of strengths in their team play, which is really solid. So we can see here Juicy ends up forcing, and we can see Juicy ends up forcing high. Now, that is a little bit of an issue, because Juicy doesn't play it perfectly here, and that's something we do have to consider. Because Juicy right here, after he goes in front of the ball, something we have to consider is those team roles, right? And when it comes to high-level Rocket League, as we said before, there's 3 roles. There's a person on the ball, which will be Itachi challenging initially here, by what it looks like. Seiko will probably fill in behind Itachi, and we know eventually that Seiko will go in the corner here. And then we need to see this off-ball pressure on the rotation back to defense. Now, normally this tends to be European teams, by what I've noticed. A lot of European teams have this issue, where they don't have a lot of defensive off-ball pressure. Off-ball. They don't have a lot of defensive off-ball pressure, and this tends to allow other teams to have a ton of space as they try to counterattack. Now, normally European teams make up for this by a very fast first man and a very close supporting second man, but due to the lack of off-ball pressure, it still gives opponents a lot of time and space to be able to set up plays. You can have a great first man and a second man, but if you give a mechanical team time and space, they're going to be able to find opportunities. And as we can see here with Juicy, he ends up rotating around the outside. He's not really doing anything for the team here. Something I like to do with some of the teams I coach is counting how long you're useless to the play. Like right here, Juicy's taken possession. He's taken it to open space. He loses a 50, so his teammates can follow it up better. So that part is good. But now from 428 onward, let's see when the next time Juicy is useful to the play. He's useful to the play right here when he forces. That's a good 8 seconds of Rocket League gameplay where Juicy ends up being useless to the play when it comes for his team. And that's something that we do have to consider when it comes to high-level Rocket League, how long players are useless to the play. Because if anybody, I don't know how much people have thought about it, but, I mean, this is 8 seconds of the game right here. Right, so if we divide 8 seconds by the 300 seconds of a 5-minute match, we can see that's 2.5% of the game that Juicy was useless. And yet, in your mind, you're like, okay, it's only 8 seconds. But Rocket League's only 5 minutes long. And it's also a very fast-paced game as well. So whenever you see times like this where your teammates are useless, it can compound over time. Now, obviously, during this event, it didn't matter too much. Gentlemates were able to maximize their strengths and minimize their weaknesses, at least mentally, going into this major. But as we can see right here, Juicy, he's not really doing anything for his team. So what I would prefer to see here is, I don't mind him going for the big boost if it's there, but then rotate back down the middle. Rotating down the middle, it doesn't guarantee that you're going to be useful to your team, but it does at least maximize your chances, your opportunities to be able to help out your team. You're still being useful and applying pressure by presence. And that's another point of Rocket League that not a lot of people talk about, is pressure by presence. At the end of the day, sometimes you can like, I'm sure you guys have played in your ranked games before, where you have been the first man, you try to challenge your opponents, but then you realize like your opponents are beating it or already had full possession, so you end up just fake challenging. But just by your presence being here, you didn't actually challenge the ball, but just because your car was there, it forced the opponents to have to do something, and or at least it makes them have to keep you in mind of where you are. So for example, if Juicy was rotating down the middle here, grabbing pads, of course he's grabbing pads for himself, but he's also maximizing his chances if he can look for demos in his rotation back, try to clear up some space. But even if he doesn't do any of that, just by rotating down the middle, it's something that the opponents have to be aware of, and he's not giving space to those opponents. So that's the big thing we can see here from Juicy. Now, we don't know if it's an individual issue from Juicy right now, or if it's a team issue, but it's something that we want to look at. So here we get another opportunity where Juicy is third man. And let's see what he ends up doing. So this time he does grab the boost and he rotates down the middle. He was looking for demos initially, and then he instantly tries to be a outlet pass again. So we can definitely see that's more going into the play style of Gentlemates, where they don't really look at demos too often. Like, defensive demos is something that doesn't seem to be really in their wheelhouse. It did look like Juicy was looking for that for a second, but look, we can see both the opponent, his teammates have 0 boost. And if I remember correctly, did the Major have the boost update? I don't think so. This can of course be calmed. So maybe both players said that they had low boost, and that's why Juicy's trying to play the follow up here. But we're definitely noticing a tendency here from Juicy. And we're going to switch over to Itachi now, just to see overall how this game ends up continuing. But we can see Itachi here, he's playing on low boost, and he's supporting very close. Juicy ends up winning the 50, and Itachi has a great follow-up. He ends up trying to pass at mid. Overall, some solid stuff so far. And we can see Itachi again. Look, he's trying to support close, facing the play. That's the most important thing here. He tried to face the play as it happens. Juicy ends up forcing. And then now Itachi's immediately up for the ball. Don't give your opponents time and space. And I think that's something that we have to give Itachi here. Look, Itachi's last man back, and sure, he's supporting Juicy, but Juicy's force wasn't necessarily the best force in the world, and yet Itachi still has all the confidence to go for this ball. This really shows how good Itachi is at reading the play. Now, of course, something we talked about at the very beginning that we're looking for is how well these pros can read the play instead of react. We don't want to react to the play. Because when we react to the play, we only know what's happening after something happens. But when we read the play, we know 100% what's happening before the ball is ever hit. Now, how good you are at reading the play can mean, can you read the play half a second at a time? Can you read it a second ahead of time? Can you read it 2 seconds ahead of time? How far ahead you can read the play is, of course, a skill. But at the end of the day, if you can read the play half a second ahead of time, it's still better than reacting, for example. Alright, and we can see Itachi here. He really understands the physics of this game. He's played this game for a very long time. You can tell just by the way a Monkey Moon is approaching this ball, his speed, his angle, his elevation, that this ball is going to just be hit forward just a little bit. And Itachi, since he doesn't want to give the opponents time and space, he jumps up, and he manages to get a really good challenge here. Let's look at this challenge again. He reads Monkey Moon's touch. Right after that first touch, he instantly goes up. Monkey Moon can only do so much. So Itachi jumps in the air, preparing for that first touch, but then when he sees that Monkey Moon's faking it, he's already in the air. He reads it midair and manages to get a great 50-50 over to the side. Now, sadly for Itachi, it looks like no one on his team is ready to support him here. If we look, it looks like Juicy, of course, Juicy was in an awkward situation here. Juicy was supporting Seiko. He ends up forcing, but looking at the team, now what we want to see here is we need one person to fill in support for Itachi, and then we want to see one person applying that off-ball pressure. So based on what I'm seeing right now, it looks like Gentlemates don't have an emphasis on off-ball pressure at all, really. It's not just a Juicy thing. We're seeing Seiko here, because right here, Juicy's filling in second for Itachi here. And we can see Seiko, instead of rotating through, trying to apply the off-ball pressure, we can see that he ends up rotating and rushing out. And there are a couple things that can happen here, where as long as the individuals on Gentlemates execute, it can be fine not having off-ball pressure, but it's not going to be consistent. And that's why we can see Gentlemates thinking back to Regionals 2 and 3, where they don't perform. And then we can also see Gentlemates in that grand final of this regional losing to Vitality. And Vitality, they're not the best team in the world when it comes to executing team ideals either, but they still ended up losing. And that's why team ideas can be so important. We can see that Itachi's going here. So we want to see Juicy instantly fill in support here for Itachi. So once Itachi forces, we want Juicy to be immediately on this ball. And then, of course, we want to be seeing Seika rotate through, looking for off-ball pressure, and then rotating out. But as we can see in this play, we'll draw it back a little bit. You can see that Seiko, he's instantly rotating out as third man, not applying off-ball pressure. Now let's see what Juicy does. And we can see Juicy, he ends up rotating out. So this ends up being a situation in the midfield where the individual skill of Itachi keeps the pressure for a little bit, but due to the team issues of not supporting close, or not being able to fill in close instantly, ends up hurting us. Now, we do know that when Gentlemates are in position, they do those jobs really well. But, as we can see, there still seems to be a lack of understanding in some way, shape, or form of being able to fill in these jobs as quickly and efficiently as possible. As we can see here, Juicy should have been able to read Itachi was winning this ball and then been able to follow it up, but instead, he ends up just continuing to rotate out. Now, let's see, is this a team issue, or did Juicy just not pay attention? Let's look. So Itachi presumably says that he's going up. And yeah, and Juicy ends up flipping out here. And we can also see Juicy as well. He's sitting under the ball. He's not really creating an angle or really looking for information that well as well. So probably something that could benefit Juicy in the situation, rotating a little bit wider, grabbing this pad right here. You would see that his teammate is getting that 50-50, so he'd start turning right here, reading where the 50 is going to go, and he'd be right here to try and jump and beat Drawley to the ball. Now, just by being here, it doesn't guarantee that Juicy has to go for the ball. In no situation does any player individually have to make the decision to go. Of course, you don't want to give your opponents time and space, but for example, if you think Drawley is just going to give the ball to Seiko for free, no reason to waste boost, right? But if Juicy was here, there would be that option to keep the pressure on, and that's what we end up missing here. And we can see Juicy he didn't give himself the best angle, but either way, it didn't really look like he was trying to prepare himself to fill in second. Maybe he thought Seiko was filling in second, so he thought maybe he had a bit more time to just do whatever. But either way, it just seems like Gentlemates don't have the best idea of how to fill in the rotations as cleanly and efficiently as possible. And we've seen that the entire game so far, and if it happens once in a game, it's already suspicious, but if it's happening for a whole minute, it's something we do have to put down as a weakness for Gentlemates. As a team, it seems that the players do not have the best understanding of how to fill in the necessary jobs on the pitch as quickly and efficiently as possible. This leads to situations where we have multiple players filling in the same role at the same time, and situations where we end up having no one in some roles and the team ends up losing pressure. But we do have to put an emphasis on the strength for Gentlemates as well. Gentlemates is an individually very fast team and emphasizes, and we already put they don't have time on the ball, which goes further into their strengths with not giving opponents time and space. And I'll put as a little side note here, this playstyle requires a very solid, I'm gonna leave that part out. There we go. So that's overall pretty solid. Gentlemates got a couple strengths, a lot of strengths, and only one real weakness so far. I'm not going to put in team flow just yet. I am going to look at that in a second, just overall seeing how well the team flows. But I'll talk about that a little bit more in a sec. But as a strength for Itachi, one of the best players I have seen at reading the play ahead of time. Compared to players that react, Itachi knows what is happening before the ball is ever hit, and this allows him to pre-position, pre-jump, or overall do the right job faster than opponents who read the play slower or react. And a good example of a player that reacts the play is a Tao, actually. He has a lot of issues when he's supporting, where he ends up not being, he plays reactionary, and that ends up leading to him not going for some balls or feeling like he has to stay further back. And whenever he stays further back, normally even if a tier or rise make a good play, it tends to lead to them losing pressure because the Tao's not supporting close, or he misreads it, and that leads to him not being able to follow it up as quickly as possible. And so that tends to be a weakness of why reading the play is so important. But as we can see, Itachi, one of the best we've seen so far, and when it comes to reading the play. Now let's go back over to Seiko, see how well Seiko does. Seiko here, very solid first touch, gets the beat over one as well, very solid beat. Now it looks like he had no support here, so oh, it looks like, never mind, Juicy did support. Juicy just misread the play here. Let's go further back. So this is a couple times now where Juicy's not really knowing exactly what's happening. We can see that Juicy, he grabs the boost, and he's instantly supporting Seiko. So when Juicy's in position, they support really, really, really well. But we can see here he's not really, he kind of rushed it a little bit. He didn't really, he knows his teammate has boost, and he knows his teammate's air dribbling. A fake in this situation is never going to really work. It's in the midfield. So Seiko would have to get a bump for it to work. But it looks like Juicy just misread the play overall. We don't know if it's a consistent issue yet, but it is something that we'll keep on the lookout for throughout the rest of this replay. But let's see how Gentlemates end up getting the goal here. So Seiko. Okay, well, I was waiting to see overall team play. But here we go. So Itachi supporting, Seiko forces, and just a good challenge. So as we can see, the off-ball pressure part of Gentlemates is still a big issue, right? But even though they don't have off-ball pressure, we can see that they always have somebody instantly supporting whoever's going to have the ball. So Seiko has the ball here. He's forcing, Itachi supporting close facing the play. And then, as we can see, Juicy's trying to rotate in. So right when Itachi gets this ball, Juicy will be rotating into the flow of the rotation and supporting close to help out Itachi. And presumably, even though it's not the best for the flow of the rotation, Seiko would probably rotate through here and then try to go support Juicy should that time ever come. But as we can see, all that had happened this play. Seiko forced. Itachi had a really good challenge. Go straight in the net. They managed to get a goal. And whether they score here or later, as long as they're able to keep that consistent pressure, that's what matters. And as we can see in this situation, Itachi managed to get a really solid goal. And again, really emphasizing, look how well he reads the play here. He supports. He knows the ball's going into the corner. And then right here, he sees that Seiko's challenging. He reads his teammate and the opponent really well. He knows that ball's going to go up. And that's why he's facing up the wall here. And then he times it perfectly to get a really good challenge as well. His ability to read the play here is very, very solid, and something that we do have to keep in mind going throughout the rest of this. But let's go. I do want to stay on Seiko here. We've switched over to Juicy and Itachi so many times now, and that could not be a good or a bad thing for Seiko. It could mean that he's not a standout player, or it could mean he's just very, very solid. We can see Seiko. He does get a demo on the rotation back here. Now he's instantly trying to fill in support for his team. Hits the ball at the backboard. Look at that. Seiko has a great understanding of where the open space is. And in this situation, Exotic makes a really good read. And as you can see, based on where the opponents were at the time, the open space here, there's two options for open space. And a good way for you all grinding it ranked, when it comes to open space, you want to think of it like this. There's close ground, close air, far ground, and far air. And you want to look at your opponents to see where the open space is and take it there as quickly as possible. So in this situation, close ground is covered by Monkey Moon. And of course, far ground is covered by Exotic and Drawley. And honestly, if Seiko played this a little bit faster, far air is also open, right? So based on the current play, if Seiko wanted to play this as slow as he did, technically the best option for possession is close air here. But him taking to far air isn't necessarily the worst. Isn't the worst here, because the ball is open, both opponents are awkward. So if he hits this off the backboard and the opponents mess up a little bit, then Seiko could have followed this up for a goal. It was the perfect play, but it still shows that he is trying to take that ball to open space. And not always is our execution going to be the best. And not always is our execution going to be the best, but as we can see, the idea is there. And I think that's something we are going to put down as a strength for Seiko. Has a great understanding of where the open space on the field is, and takes the ball there as quickly as he can. This ensures the team always maintains possession when Seiko has it, but also ensures that he has the time to set up plays for his teammates. So overall, really solid strength here for Seiko. I just realized I put it in the wrong spot. Control X. There we go. Alright, so let's keep watching. Let's see, how does Juicy, and we can see Juicy, he ends up rotating out here again. So Juicy, he ends up You can see that structure for Gentlemates isn't necessarily the best here. Look at this as well. So normally, when it comes to high-level Rocket League, of course, we've talked about we want that off-ball pressure, we want someone on the ball, we want someone supporting. But this is one of those situations where we can see that lack of understanding of structure as well kind of makes the team be put themselves in awkward situations here again. We can see that Juicy ends up playing more to the middle when, honestly, Seiko is covering that option already. Seiko is covering a 50 here from Itachi. He's covering a backboard hit. He's covering a pass out mid. As long as Seiko's supporting close here, he's doing that job way better than Juicy can in the situation. And we talked about trying to be useful, right? And right now, it kind of looks like Gentlemates are playing very similarly to how old Rocket League was played. If you don't know how old Rocket League is played, normally the way that teams push up the field, normally we always have somebody with the ball, we have someone instantly go mid, and we have someone instantly playing behind. And this is kind of how teams instantly filled in rotations throughout the pitch. But the reason why this style of rotation stopped being used, I know some coaches still try to teach it today, but they try to fill it, but they try to come up with other concepts to try to fix the issues this has. But what they end up trying to do but the issue with this is this person is only useful if he receives a pass. If the person with the ball loses a 50, this guy is completely useless. And if this person solo plays, this guy is also completely useless. And you're probably wondering, well, can he go for a demo? Well, that's where, when we look at high-level Rocket League, we want to make sure there's a flow to the rotation. And there's a few different reasons for that. But think about it like this. If we have if someone goes for a demo from the midfield like this and they end up going in this direction, we have 4 people filling into this flow on this in the game and 2 people in this flow. And as from a logical point of view, where do you think the ball's going to end up going? Well, 4 people are in this flow and 2 people are in this flow. More than likely, this flow is going to overtake the other, and the ball is going to go to the other end of the pitch. But also, you're just physically getting in your teammates' way going in this direction, which will slow down your teammates. And in Rocket League, momentum is a very important aspect. That's the reason why we have a flow in Rocket League, to keep the individual momentum of all the players up as much as we can. So we can see that Juicy, and if our second man were to cut to go for a demo here and go in this direction, it will also hurt the players with the ball. It'll stagnate them. It'll make our spheres of influence as individuals far slower. And that's also an issue that we have to take into account. So due to that idea, our second man can't really go for demos. Also, smaller side note, it's a little easier to avoid demos if someone's going the same direction as you as well. So you're not even being as useful as an off-ball pressure guy. So the reason why this old style rotation is bad with someone instantly being mid and someone always being behind is because this guy is literally only useful if he receives a pass. And that ends up being something that we still see sometimes, especially with European teams, because this is how they used to teach rotation. This is what I've heard people refer to these rotations as Dignitas rotations. I've heard them referred to as the Vitality V. I've heard them referred to other people as Gregan rotations, Verge rotations. I don't know if this is what Gregan or Verge actually taught. I believe Gregan taught rotations this way. I think Verge taught a little bit more about keeping flow and momentum, but don't hold me to that. I haven't watched any of their videos. I haven't watched their original old videos in so long at this point, so I forget how exactly they taught it. But I do know people call these the Greg or Gregan or Verge rotations. I also know people call them the Vitality V, Dignitas rotations. But the big issue with this is, of course, that second man ends up being really useless. And it's not just the second man. This guy is also pretty useless as well. This guy is only useful if his teammate loses the 50 or forces. And as you can see, it kind of makes 2 players on the pitch, their spheres of influence, it makes them very, very small. This guy's sphere of influence is like this, his is like this. And our first man's sphere of influence is still big, but overall, we're not covering much of the pitch. And as we can see in this situation, that's exactly what's happening here. Juicy, he's only useful if that ball goes to him. And as we see in this situation, Itachi ends up losing this 50 back, and Juicy ends up having to rotate behind Seiko, and he ends up rotating out, but he was completely useless to the play the entire time. So this is why you're probably wondering, okay, Luke, what would be the better thing to do here? Well, this is where I said Seiko can cover all the options of support. So what Juicy should have done from the get-go is probably just grab pads and gotten behind Seiko to be support for when Seiko gets the ball guy. Or if he was already in front of the ball, he should have continued to apply off-ball pressure, become maybe a blindside pass on the other end of the pitch, and then after he becomes a blindside pass, if he sees his teammates aren't going to pass it, then rotate out to fill in the next support player behind Seiko. And what this allows us to do is it allows us to keep a flow to the rotation. So this can help us maximize pressure. We'll have every single position from ball guy to support guy to off ball pressure being filled in instantly. Boom, boom, boom. And that's what we want to see from these players, is we want to see that flow to the rotation. So as we can see, Gentlemates don't have that flow to the rotation, and we can see they don't have that structure as well. So sadly, I'm going to have to put that into one of their weaknesses. So not only are they not the best at realizing what job they should fill in, they also don't have the best understanding of structure. The team also does not have the best understanding of structure or what the necessary jobs on the pitch even are, which leads to players filling in the same role as well, which can cause double commits, but also means that sometimes we have players not filling in a necessary role at all, which ends up hurting the team's pressure as well. So as we can see, decent amount of issues here when it comes to Gentlemates' team play. They're definitely not the best rotating team in the world. So this is from a pure rotational standpoint. It doesn't mean that they're not doing stuff really well. As we can see, their support when they're in position is really good. It's just their ability to figure out, am I in position? Am I in the right place? Do I know what job I am? That's the issue with Gentlemates. They don't know how the best way to get into position, but once they're there, they do it better than most people. And that's something that we have to consider as a team strength. As we can see here, Seiko pops it up, but Juicy doesn't support right away. Luckily for him, Exotic ends up giving away possession. Juicy ends up having a really good read here. And this time we do see off-ball pressure from Juicy, but then we see the instant rotation out. So here, supporting. Supports really well. It looks like that Juicy has a really good read of the play as well. That's something that it looks like more so it's a team issue whenever Juicy gets caught off guard. Because honestly, in these little situations right here, we see that he applies off-ball pressure. He recognizes that the ball is getting hit to the corner here. He recognizes that it's, and look at this, like, this might seem very, very little, but look how far away Seiko is, right? So in Juicy's mind right here, he's like, okay, well, Seiko's really far away from the play, so I'm going to try to fill in second here. So even though Gentlemates aren't the best when it comes to filling in rotation, we can still see that they still have some idea of what they need to do. And as we can see, Juicy, he reads Seiko's far away from the play, so he cuts to fill in second for Itachi. And then right afterwards, he ends up instantly filling in support. Look at this. He reads Itachi's losing the 50 over to the corner here. He misreads the wall bounce a little bit, but he keeps possession, and overall he sets up a really good play. He forces for a teammate, and then he does instantly rotate out again, so of course that's a team issue as we now know. But we can see some amazing individual skills here from Juicy. And hello, Kaz. Welcome to the stream. Happy birthday. From yours truly, Luke. How you doing, man? Welcome to the stream. But as we can put a strength here from Juicy. Juicy is really solid when it comes to reading the play ahead of time. And this ahead of time, and we can copy and paste this. Compared to other players that react, Juicy knows what is happening before the ball is ever hit, and this allows him overall to do the right job faster than opponents who read the play slowly or react. Think you do well. Cake and ice cream soon? Yes, sir. What kind? Okay, I do have to ask you, what flavor cake and what flavor ice cream? And I found out that people don't like this as much as other people. I'm somebody who loves chocolate. So like I love chocolate cake. I love chocolate ice cream. I love chocolate in general. But I heard some people don't like chocolate ice cream or chocolate cake that much, so that's why I asked. But aside from that tangent, let's get back into it. See here, Juicy's instantly up, takes possession, and I think something that people don't recognize as well, the mechanics on Gentlemates are actually really, really good. And I think that's something that people aren't recognizing. Now that I'm watching the replay, I thought that, honestly, when I went into the major, I thought individually that Gentlemates were not the best, but team-wise they would have been good. But based on what I'm seeing, I mean, they do have some team strengths, but it looks like individually, their individual skill is what's keeping them in. Chocolate cake and peanut butter icing and chocolate and okay, there we go. As long as there's some chocolate, there we go. Gotta save me a slice. Now, I don't like peanut butter that much, but you know what? Chocolate can make anything taste better. But yeah, I'm honestly surprised looking at the replays. Like individually, I'd say Gentlemates are looking like some of the best. Now, I'm going to stay on Itachi for a little bit, because the one, like, Seiko and Juicy, we know they have mechanics. They have very solid first touches. Mechanically, they look like they're some of the best players in the world right now. But Itachi's always been my question mark. I remember analyzing Itachi last season, and honestly, his mechanics didn't hold up last season. But something that Itachi was really good at is boost management, pathing, reading the play, of course. And look at this, great support here from Itachi. So I think something that we can write down for all three players for Gentlemates is individually, they are all fantastic at second man. I think that's a strong suit that we have to put down. So overall, a strength for second man. I think I already wrote that down as a team strength, which makes them more dynamic as a team. Yeah, so I'm just going to emphasize it even more. When any of the players are in the support / second man role, each player has a fantastic understanding of supporting as close as they can facing the player. This ensures they are able to beat players to the ball that do not support close or face the play. And we're going to write that down as a strength for all of them as well. As second man, supports as close as he can facing the play, which ensures that he can beat players to balls where the opponents are. A second man supports as close as he can facing the play, which ensures that he can beat players to balls where the opponents are not. Where he can beat players to balls where the opponents are not. Trying to find a better way to wear this. As second man supports as close as he can facing the play. This ensures that he is always the fastest person to the ball after a first man does something. This also means that if an opponent is not supporting properly, you will always dust them. We said ball. All right. And we can copy and paste this literally for all the players. Here we go. And awesome. Okay, so we got a lot of individual strengths when it comes to Gentlemates, and we got a lot of team strengths, but we also got a lot of weaknesses from Gentlemates. So let's see how this continues. Can you repeat everything again from the beginning? I don't know about that, Chief. But how you doing, Abdiel? Welcome to the stream, good sir. How we doing? How we doing? Here we go. Itachi puts it over one. Yeah, I don't think we can say Itachi mechanically is one of the best in the world. I don't think we can say that just yet. But he makes up for it by his insane ability to read the play. It's not that he's bad mechanically, it's just compared to other pros, he's not as mechanical. So I think that is a weakness that we're going to have to put to for Itachi. Compared to other pros, is not one of the best mechanical. This means that compared to other pros in the same situations, he will create less opportunities. He will create less opportunities or be able to do less. So that's something that we do have to keep into consideration. So that is the first weakness we have for Itachi, sad times. And we'll look at Juicy here and Seiko for a second. But if your only weakness is you're just not as mechanical as the best pros in the game, I'd say that's pretty solid. And remember, I'm not talking about just mechanics. Individually, he's great still. Like, he's so good at reading the play. Like, he knows what's happening 2-3 seconds ahead of sometimes of what the opponents are doing. Just chilling, good stuff. You can see Itachi here. He's on low boost. As we can see, he does end up giving away possession. Granted, they're winning 2-0, so I think that's more so maybe a mindset where they're winning by 2. Like, maybe we can just keep them awkward, keep the ball upfield. Now, playing against the best teams in the world, normally that would result in just a quick counter and a quick goal. As we can see, this whole play started with the giveaway of possession from Itachi, right? Yeah, so he gives away the ball right here. Instead of trying to set up Juicy, he just ends up giving away the ball. And then we can see Juicy does make a challenge, but that initial giveaway is just giving BDS so much time and space. And then Itachi gets demoed here. And overall, from that initial giveaway of possession, it looks like BDS never really lost it. And as we can see, ends up resulting in a goal. So, yeah, a little bit of a giveaway of possession there from Itachi. I don't think that's a consistent issue. It looked to be more so an in-the-moment type decision, which everybody will make mistakes from time now and then. What matters is, does it happen more than once? So, for example, if we watch the quarterfinals and we see Itachi on low boost give away the ball, then we can say that's probably a consistent weakness from Itachi. But, alright. I think we can put down one more set of strengths for Seiko and Juicy. Mechanically, one of the best in the world and can execute many different ideas that other pros cannot. And we can put the same thing as a strength for Juicy as well. But we already got a lot of notes, so now we're pretty much going to have just an easy, fun time looking at the rest of this. So here we go. Abdiel, if you're still in chat, what game from the quarterfinals do you think we should look at? We could look at a loss. We looked at a win in the last replay. We could look at maybe Genji getting the 3-2 win. Maybe look at game 6 or 7, see how they held down the fort. Game 2 could be a good one. I don't know if you're still in chat, Abdiel, but if you are, feel free to let me know what game you think we should look at. Either way, we're going to be seeing the same strengths and weaknesses. Game 7? Alright, I'm down with that. I'm down with that. So let's look at the major. Single elimination stage. Gentlemates versus Gen G. And then we have a look at the stats. Stats, and everybody, don't let anyone fool you. Stats in Rocket League, they don't guarantee there's a problem. You can use stats to look to see if there might be a problem or what to look for in a replay, but it's not something that guarantees an issue. So normally what we're looking for positive demos. We can see, yeah, so we can definitely see demos are a big issue. That off-ball pressure from Gentlemates is something that is really lacking for them. And it looks like they're also not the best at avoiding demos either. Juicy got demoed twice a game. Now, it looks like they were still able to get the wins, which at the end of the day, that's what matters. But so that's something that we can look at. Also looking at the ground stat, I'm looking between 50 and 60. Everyone in the lobby and a pro lobby normally is between those numbers, so that looks fine. And then average boost, overall, looks like Juicy Seiko had a pretty good amount of high average boost. If we look at small pad count, we can see Itachi's pretty high in small pads. But yeah, so honestly, even on the stat side of things, this would be a like Gentlemates winning is honestly kind of an anomaly based on the stats. I mean, the only thing we can really look at is shot percentage. Shot percentage, we can see Gentlemates had that, but how many shots did that team have? I mean, yeah, even looking at it from a stats perspective, this was definitely an upset win here for Gentlemate. So honestly, kudos to Gentlemates to be able to hold their nerve, and that's something that most people don't really talk about is that mental aspect. I mean, we can go back to last season when I analyzed the winter major teams, all 16 winter major teams. On paper, the only team that was worse than Gladiators, or sorry, the only team that was slightly better than Gladiators was G1. G1 on paper were worse than every other team at this event besides Gladiators. Maybe Pioneers, but honestly, on paper, Pioneers still impressed me more. But Pioneers also had a lot of mental issues last season compared to when they first got onto the scene. And G1, like when I analyzed their team, they had the most weaknesses. They had very little strengths. Honestly, on paper, G1 didn't show me anything to impress. In fact, I believe on stream I got S5 Cosmic to send me one of his. He was rank A at the time, so I got him to send me one of his rank A replays, and we compared G1's replays versus Vitality, which they were playing with Size instead of Zen at the time. But they were playing with. But we compared the replay between G1 and Vitality, and then we compared that to one of Cosmic's rank A replays. It looked exactly the same. And so on paper, let's just say that G1 didn't impress me, but their mentality was so good that look, they beat the grand finalists in 5. They take G2 to game 5, and they also take Crew to game 5. On paper, these three teams were the better teams. And of course, G1, they barely weren't able to win the other two game 5s. But G1 could have easily, just through mentality alone, pretty much, could have gone 3-0 in this group. When on paper, they were probably one of the worst teams at this event. And it really goes to show you how mentality can make a team so much stronger. You can maximize the strengths you do have, and you can minimize the weaknesses that you do have. Now, G1, they had so many weaknesses and so little strengths that even though their mentality was good, by maximizing their strengths, they still were only barely able to beat FaZe and couldn't clinch out a series win against Crew or G2. And Crew and G2 weren't necessarily playing the best, but they were still playing decently. That's something that we do have to keep in mind. But without further ado, let's get into this game 7. See if we can add on any more strengths or weaknesses. Honestly, I'm not expecting to see anything new. Oh, speaking of which, we should probably add on Gentlemates do not have the best understanding of the necessity of off-ball pressure on both offense and defense. This can lead to giving the other team lots more time and space on both offense and defense to both set up, be in the best positions possible, and set up a great play. Overall, it diminishes the ability of the team to apply consistent pressure and relieve pressure. And as we can see, that's a big weakness that Vitality also had last season. But Vitality were three individually were doing really, really well. Mentality-wise, they're also doing really well. And to be frank, last season, the teams that did know how to rotate just didn't have the individual skill. For example, last season, the best rotating teams went G2, Falcons, Gen G, and Complexity. Those are the 4 best rotating teams. BDS was at number 5. But if you remember last season, who were the teams that got top 4? Vitality, Carmine Core, Liquid, BDS. So the only team from the top 5 rotating-wise is BDS, and even they were the 5th best rotating team. And it goes to show you last season, individual skill meant a lot more than team skill. Whereas 2 seasons ago, G2 and BDS were in the grand finals, and individually they were nowhere near the best players individually, and yet they were still the ones who made the grand final. All the other teams were so bad rotationally that the individual skill didn't matter. And as we can see in this major, based on the individual strengths and team weaknesses, it looks like the team that ended up winning was the better mental team with more solid individuals than necessarily the team with the better rotations. So, it's something to keep in mind. But, let's look at game number 7. Remember correctly, doesn't Gen G score first? No, they don't. Never mind. Now, thinking back on it, never mind. I remember. I remember how they ended up scoring. So right off the bat, we actually do see some off-ball pressure from Juicy, so that's actually nice. Like, we are seeing little moments of, like, the players individually make a decision, and that's fine. Like, the fact that the players are making decisions that are smart is really, really good. It's just, as a team, we can tell there's a fundamental lack of understanding when it comes to how to maximize pressure from a team standpoint. We can see from an individual standpoint, the players know what's going on, but that's it. And how? Okay, hold on. I know we're looking at how is this not a goal? Apparently, Jack, he tossed. Look at this. He gets a perfect first touch, and he just messes up the second touch. Sad times for apparently Jack. I mean, as I said at the beginning of the stream, I truly believe that every series that Gentlemates played at this major was an upset. I think every series that Gentlemates won was an upset, just going on paper. And based on all the notes that I'm taking now, I think that, honestly, I agree. Before the major, these are the teams that we analyzed, which everybody who wants access to the spreadsheet, I'll put that in chat right now. Here we go. But looking at but all these different teams that we analyzed, from Carmine Core to G2 to Fury to Complexity to Pioneers, the only team that on this list that I would say is probably worse than Gentlemates is Pioneers. Complexity, they weren't the strongest, but I'd say on paper, even Complexity were better. I'd say the same thing about... And then Furia, G2, and Karmico were the 3 best teams on paper at the LAN, in my personal opinion. And at the end of the day, Gentlemates are still the ones that won. So it is interesting to see overall how well these teams were performing and how well that they needed and what they needed to do from a team standpoint. Oh shoot, wrong border. I wonder, was it this color? Okay, a little bit darker. Hold up. Is it this one? Yeah, there we go. I just noticed that I had to fix it right away. But all right. I mean, Gentlemates, they managed to hold their nerve. They managed to do what they needed to do. So, as we can see, we're still seeing the same structural issues, but even though the structure isn't the best, we can see that their support is far better than Gen G. And this is where comparing teams is so important. Like, sure, here, looking at it from a structure perspective, we have a first man here, we have someone behind, and somebody mid. Like, as we talked about in the previous replay, not the best structure. But since Juicy is supporting so much better than First Kill, look, Juicy's going to be the first person up with this ball compared to First Kill. He's also closer to the ball, and that's why Juicy ends up still being threatening here. Because look, Chronic forces, and then Juicy beats First Killer to that ball just into that better support role. So we can see that Gentlemates are supporting better than other players. Where am I going? Now let's see how this replay continues. We can see the Gentlemates, Itachi gets the beat over 1. Now let's see what happens here. So Itachi, he's supporting. He's instantly up. So here his support was a little bit off, but he did just grab that big boost. But honestly, something we do have to put down for Itachi is like... I can't believe I forgot to put it in the first replay. One of the best in the world with boost and momentum management. Also one of the best at pad padding properly. Something we do have to put for Itachi. Now I'm gonna pay a bit more attention to Seiko. We don't have a lot for Seiko in this so far. Let's see how well he does with his momentum and boost management. So he avoids the bump. Force is high. Look at that support from Itachi. And Juicy, of course, the support as well. Apparently Jack ends up messing up a little bit. We can see the hesitation from Genji is definitely setting in. Whereas we can see Gentlemates, they're just trusting each other, and they're just going in with full confidence. And they remind, even if they mess up mechanically, as long as they go, they'll be fine. He's going all the way back for big boost. So we can see definitely Seiko's boost pathing and isn't the best. It looks like his management's fine. His momentum management's pretty good as well. Here he has 80 boost. Yeah, we can see his boost management's really well. His boost management's pretty solid. We can see that his momentum management's pretty good. But I'd say a weakness for Seiko that we can put down is not the best at pathing to stay closer to the plane with boost. Also is not the most comfortable on low boost. Whereas we can put for a strength for Itachi is very comfortable on low boost. And Juicy, we haven't really put a weakness for him yet. Maybe he just doesn't have any weaknesses. I doubt it. Well, we can see. Okay. Right off the bat, we can see he's using a ton of boost. So definitely not going to be putting boost management. I mean, look at this. He just did one pre-flip and he's used 100 boost. So yeah, boost management for Juicy, definitely not the best. In fact, I'd say it's probably a big weakness based on, because we didn't really pay attention to it last game, but if we're seeing it this much right into the game, definitely an issue. Not the best, or not good at managing boost / feathering. Pathing for boost is also not the best. But what we can do is Juicy is great at maintaining momentum and managing it. So his boost isn't the best, but his momentum is really good. And then honestly, Seiko, he's just outside the boost pathing. I don't think the other stuff that he does is really a strength. It's just he doesn't do better. He doesn't do worse than other pros. It's just solid. There we go. Ball ends up getting forced. Pops the ball off the side. Good follow-up. Gets the 50, gets a bump. Okay, we're seeing a little bit more off-ball pressure here. And they managed to get a goal as well off of it. So when they finally apply off-ball pressure, they're managing to get a goal. As we can tell, it's definitely not consistent. They still have it on defense, so I'm still going to label it as a weakness for them for now. But if they can make this consistent going into the second regional of theirs, I haven't looked at a replay from their most recent regional. But let's see how they hold down the fort. So Genji get a kickoff goal. But honestly, something I am gonna have to put probably as a I'm hesitating on it. Like, I'm kind of teetering in between strength and weakness on the on how dynamic their play style is. Like, honestly, we're not really seeing much playstyle wise. Like, honestly, they're not passing very quick. A lot of their strengths come from supporting their teammates quickly, but not really from passing. We haven't really seen them pass too much in any of the replays that we've done. We've kind of seen them solo play and call each other off, but we haven't really seen passing. And that's really weird to me because a lot of European teams normally their weakness is they pass too much. But in this situation, we're not really seeing that dynamic of a play style. Now, at the end of the day, if it's consistent and it works, great. But at the end of the day, you're gonna like Gentlemates aren't going to be a team more than likely that wins a world championship. Now, can they win a world championship? Oh, yes, they definitely can. They have the individual skill to do so, but they got a lot of teamwork that they got to be able to work on before they get better. As we can see, just overall, we haven't really, I don't think we've really seen one pass yet from Gentlemates. In fact, we've seen overall solo play, solo play, solo play. So it's making them consistent, but they're going to lose to a team in the future that has a more dynamic playstyle that executes. And that's why, I mean, like, looking at all these games, they're pretty much upset wins. I mean, I know I said stats aren't something that you look at to guarantee if there's an issue happening, but, I mean, look at all these stats. Based on these stats, the only thing that Gentlemates have going for them is shooting percentage, but outside shooting percentage, they're getting beaten shots that in boost, they got average boost on top, but if we look at stolen pads and big pads, off-ball pressure is definitely up for Gen G. And then we look at movement, speed. Overall, Gen G are playing faster. Let's look at the demos inflicted. Look at this. First killer. Almost 3 demos a game. Not even demoed once a game on average. And then apparently Jack, he's positive as well. The only issue is Chronic, but Chronic is still getting at least a demo a game, and he's only getting demoed 1.5 times a game, so it is still negative for Chronic, but compare that to Itachi, who's not getting a single demo a game and almost getting demoed twice a game. That's a big issue. From a stats perspective, Gen G should have won this, and from an on-paper perspective, Gen G should have won this. So, but I think that we do have to put, and this is more of an intangible, as a strength, based on the amount of weaknesses in the team and looking at the stat differences between Gentlemates and their opponents, I would say it is I would say Gentlemates are an amazing team mentally to be able to go into every game with confidence and no hesitation. I would say Gentlemates this maximizes the strengths they do have and minimizes the weaknesses they have. So, of course, mentality is not something a checkbox I can't really put a checkbox on for Gentlemates, as in, like, I can't really select, hey, their mentality is great, and I can objectively approve that. But looking at how stats-wise they're getting completely beat, and on paper they're getting completely beat by these other teams, and yet they're still winning, I think that really shows how strong Gentlemates mental are. I mean, look at the series they have. They did Game 6. They went Game 7, Game 7, and then they go to Game 6 and stop the reverse sweep from G2. If that doesn't show how solid they are mentally as a team, I mean, that's great for them. Really good job on Eversax and the players keeping the mental in place. And hello, Drapino. How we doing, homie? Welcome to the stream. Today, we're not doing individual replay review today. We're mainly just doing a deep dive analysis for Gentlemates, since I do have to leave earlier today. But overall, hopefully everyone's been enjoying. And here's what I'll ask you guys in chat. I don't know if Abdiel is still here, but anybody in chat, what would you guys prefer to look at? Do we want to look at a game from the Carmine Core series, or do we want to skip straight to the grand final and maybe look at this game 2 OT against G2? Anyone in chat have an opinion? Do we want to look at a Carmine Core series, or do we want to look at the G2 series? What do we think? Personally, I want to see I mean, we've already seen Gentlemates play against BDS, so I kind of want to see them against another NA team. But what do you think? Finals? Alright, that's what I was thinking too. So let's look at Game 2 between G2 and Gen G in this final. If this goes the other way, who knows? Maybe we get a Game 7 Grand Final. And now that we've pretty much taken all the notes we could ever need, more than likely we're probably not going to be changing them after this. We'll look over them afterwards, but... Let's see, Game 2. Just to make sure, let's look at stats. Let's see how did G2 handle them. So from a stat standpoint, positive on demos is beast mode. Juicy went neutral, Atomic went neutral, Itachi went neutral. So here actually on the demo game against G2, Gentlemates actually stepped up on the demo game. From an average boost standpoint, yep, definitely better for Gentlemates. Big pad count, or I should say stolen big pad count. G2 definitely had the awful pressure there. Stolen mini pad count. Daniel actually had some issues with that. And then movement. Everyone has between 50 and 60 pretty much, so that's fine. All right. Now let's look at Game 2. Let's see, who should we start off with? Let's start off with Seiko. I've started off with Seiko every game, but I keep switching off of him every game. Great delayed kickoff. I like the idea. See Seiko here. Ends up fake challenging. Beast mode manages to maintain possession really well, though. We can see G2 instantly applying that pressure. And then we can see Seiko trying to give that support. Not the best positioning for support there, but he still manages to read the play and help out his teammate. Pressure by presence. So here he's supporting his teammate. Ball gets it to the side. Great overall challenge. Sends it all the way to the other end. Tries to put it mid. But yeah, we can see right off the bat, we can see that Gentlemates, honestly, a lot of their issues that we've seen from the earlier series seems to be a bit more diminished. It looks like Gentlemates are playing with so much confidence now that it's really maximizing their strengths and minimizing their weaknesses. We can see here he's going to support close, loses the 50 back, passes out mid, Juicy supporting close. This is a perfect team play, and this is where we're finally starting to see at least some strengths. If we can see this Gentlemates every single second of the game, this will be the Gentlemates that does a perfect split just like Vitality did. Because look, now we can see Itachi's going to be rotating through off-ball pressure. We can see Seiko is initially supporting Itachi with the ball. Juicy filling in support close. I mean, look at this play. Let's go a little bit further back as well. But look how everyone fills in. Itachi, first man. Seiko, trying to support close, facing forward, second man. Juicy, he's going to be filling in behind Seiko for when Seiko becomes the first man. Right? And then Itachi should become off-ball pressure and go for a boost or look for a bumper demo. Seiko, of course, become first man and try to set up his teammate or score himself. And Juicy, of course, will try to support Seiko. And look at how this play ends up developing. Support, and look at that instant support for Juicy. And Itachi rotates through as well. Overall, a perfect play from Gentlemates. Grabs the mid-right. Itachi takes it up. Let's see how Seiko handles his possession here. Hits it over one. Ends up getting demoed. But overall, Gentlemates are doing pretty well here. Itachi's on low boost, but he ends up forcing a little bit of a dunk there on Juicy. Like, at the end of the day, G2 are probably the best individual team in the world right now. So, the fact that... Actually, well, I think G2 probably are just a little below... Actually, I think... Because I do think Lost and Yan beat Beast Mode and Daniel individually. But I do think that Atomic beats Drufinho individually. If I were to make a statement on that. So I think if in that mind, I mean, I don't know, G2 and Furia are really close individually, but they're both definitely the best in the, like, one of those teams are the best individual teams in the world. Look at that first touch from Beast Mode. He's so creative when he has the ball. Sets up his teammate, managed to get a goal. I mean, look at that. I mean, let's look at another player's perspective here real quick. Let's see how Juicy supports. So Seiko is forcing here. Yeah, just a little hesitation. Looks like Juicy misread it a little bit. At the end of the day, it's not perfect. I mean, Beast Mode does a really good play there. So, it's not the end of the world. But they do get kickoffs. They do get scored on right off the kickoff. Atomic puts it off the corner. Seiko misreads. Okay. Well, I assume that's also a one-time mistake. Because normally, when I try to put down a strength or a weakness, I wait till I see it twice in the same game. Because if you've already mastered something, it doesn't matter how nervous you're going to get. If you've mastered something, you're just going to keep succeeding at it. For example, most of us have probably walked our entire lives, right? No matter how nervous we get, we're not going to forget how to walk. We're still going to walk just fine, right? That's because we've mastered walking, so to speak. But if we haven't mastered something, then as we get more and more nervous, we're going to be making that same mistake more often, right? And I do have to put that, and I've noticed this enough now. I mean, we watched a few because initially I didn't want to put it down, but I think we do have to put when on low boost, the team overall does not have the best understanding of maintaining possession. That's something that we do have to keep in mind. Both teams are constantly fighting for possession. So when you give it away for free, you give the other team exactly what they wanted. Now, individually, Gentlemates should be able to recover and still not get scored on, even if they do make a mistake, but it's something that you do have to keep in mind. So, like, all these weaknesses will add up over time if you play against an individually more confident team. So here we go. Supporting here is Juicy. Reads the play really well here. Tries to maintain possession. A little bit of a mess up there. We do see the instant rush out, so we're still seeing the issues with off-ball pressure being a consistent idea. Alright, Seiko's going to push that forward. Follow it up. Okay, pretty solid. Good follow-up there as well. See how Juicy takes possession. Puts the ball at the sidewall. Tries to pre-flip through it. Not able to get it, but he at least loses the 50. Low boost gives away possession again. Can't believe I didn't want to put that in the notes till now, because I saw that a few times from them in previous games, but I guess it didn't really hit my mind as much as it should have. Tries the support. Go to support Itachi. Okay, finally we see a pass. There we go. They finally get a good pass. Like, generally, this is one of the few passes we've actually seen from Gentlemates. And I think I am going to put a weakness as well. As a weakness, Gentlemates do not have a very dynamic playstyle, which means that teams can more easily read the intentions of the players on the pitch. So that's something that we want to keep in mind when it comes to, you want to have a dynamic, you want to mix up, you want to have some demo plays, you want to have some solo plays, you want to have some team plays, right? You want to be able to set up all of those different things. And the more dynamic the play style, the harder you are to read. Now, technically speaking, as long as Gentlemates execute, not having a dynamic play style is fine. I mean, for example, Falcons, when they made the grand finals at the spring major 2 seasons ago, they also did not have a very dynamic play style, but they still managed to make it to the grand finals due to their sheer consistency. And sometimes consistency works, but normally it's reliant off the other team's messing up more so than your team succeeding. Now, Gentlemates played a very consistent game, but as we can tell by G2 starting to reverse sweep against Gentlemates, as we can tell by Gen G and Carmen Core, who probably should on paper have won both those series as well, just comparing all those series, like, it normally is reliant on the other team messing up. And I think that's very... And I think that also occurred in the previous weekend with Europe, looking at the fourth qualifier. Look who Gentlemates played against. Gentlemates played against a team they should never lose against. Team 3, a team they could lose against if they individually step up. And then Carmen Corps, of course, they lost that one. And then Jobless, which is the old Moist roster, just without Joyo. And looking at that, I mean, looking at these teams, it really should, like, that they played against, like, they shouldn't lose any of the teams that they ended up beating. But looking at the grand finals, they had some really close games against Luna Galaxy. The one non-close game was the one that Luna Galaxy won. And then they also go to Game 7 against Oxygen. With Oxygen, I mean, Archie's never really impressed me. But as we can see, like, close games. And when we have a Vitality that's playing with confidence, it's rotating properly. I mean, look at this. Vitality could have perfect swept. Could have perfect swept Gentlemates. And I think that's the big issue with Gentlemates right now is if another team is on, they are going to lose. And I think that's the most important thing to keep in mind. Have any of the players you analyzed ever reached out and said anything? I know some players have. I just forget who. Because I've analyzed players from NA to EU, to MENA to SAM, to OCE to APAC. So some players have hit out. I'm not going to say names. But yeah, normally this is more so for the fans. Although I generally think that any player or team that watches this could definitely benefit from it. I do remember, because I post, just to get more traction for my spreadsheet, I do post to the Rocket League the RL Esports subreddit. And I remember one of the comments somebody said is, bro's really putting the weaknesses for some of these best teams right before the major, just out for anyone to see. And that's the idea. Now, in my opinion, even if I, like, let's say in future, I get on a top team that I can help them and coach them, I personally wouldn't mind still doing deep dive analysis, because in my personal opinion, if my team is doing our job properly, we should win anyway. Like, sure, I would rather everybody in the world be better teams, and then we do the better job than they can. That's always been my take. Like, hey, like, yeah, sure, I'm helping out these other teams, but if you guys are doing what we need to be doing, if we're working harder than everyone else, we should still win. That's why I've never minded doing analysis, even when I'm coaching my RLCS teams. You're literally giving them the road to success. I mean, yeah, I try to help out. I mean, that's why this whole spreadsheet was developed, for coaches, for casters, for the viewers that love just love analysis. That was my whole reason to start in this series. And also, I just need to get more content out. That's why I'm happy. I mean, if you guys don't know, I'm going to be streaming every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Of course, Friday, I do got day 1 of open quals for my EU team. So I don't know when I'll stream on Friday, because, of course, we do got NA open quals as well. Probably keeping it. I'm probably going to stream either, instead of maybe at 12 PST, I might stream at 1 or 2, just to give myself... And we'll probably be playing different games, because I know Monday and Wednesday we're mainly going to be doing replay review. And then on Friday I'm planning that for more fun stuff, whether it be, and this is a great shot, but whether it be, because I've actually never beaten Skyrim, funnily enough. I agree that it's an amazing game based on everything I've seen, but I've never completed Skyrim. I've also never completed 1,000 Year Door, which is a Paper Mario game, and a bunch of other games that I want to complete and overall have some fun with. So I'm pretty much going to use Friday as a more fun type thing for content. We'll probably do some replay reviews too, don't get me wrong, but it'll be a bit more focused on just having a bit more fun, trying to spread my horizons as a content creator. But look at this shot here from Juicy. Overall, showing mechanically why he's one of the best in the world. If you can do this on G2, you can do this on anybody. Look at this. Puts it to open space, lands on the ceiling. Beast mode hesitates before he jumps, and just gives too much time and space to Juicy. And there we go. So, looking at the notes here, we got a lot of notes for Gentlemates. Individually, They are actually really, really solid. I didn't expect this. Honestly, my initial impression going into doing this deep dive analysis is honestly, I thought team-wise, they going into this, they would have been way better, and individually they've been way worse. But now, after looking at all the replays, the strengths for Gentlemates come down to their individual skill, and they still have a decent amount of team strengths, but mostly their mentality is something I'd say. Because even for the team strengths that we did put down here, I'd say also are more individual oriented. But, oh my, so we can copy and paste these real quick. Let me paste them into, oh, you guys get to see what I need to do here for the spreadsheet. So we can page template, we can duplicate that real quick. And move that so we can rename this to Gentlemates Major 1. There we go. Probably keep it like there we go. So we can put the raw notes here from the stream in here. There we go. It looks really weird doing that. I wonder, would it look better if... So I'll paste what I have under. But what happens if I remove... all of this? Just make it all on one line. Does it look better? I have no idea. You know what? It's fine. We can leave it as it is in the spreadsheet. I think that's fine. But yeah, look at that. Tons of strengths and weaknesses here for the side of Gentlemates. And of course, I got to put the players in. Seiko, Itachi, and we got Neon Cat, Nyan Cat, whoops. And why am I blanking on his name? Busey. There we go. But overall, for the YouTube video, the stream. Thank you everybody for who's watching on the YouTube side of things. Thank you so much for watching, everybody on YouTube. Here's the overall last look at the notes. Thank you so much for watching on YouTube, and I hope you guys all have a good night. Hope you show up to the next YouTube video. Peace.